Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Political Insider. I'm Brett Smith, your humble host. Joining me today is the content manager for Bongino Report. He's a New York Times and Amazon bestselling author of books like Debunk This, Spygate, and his new book, Dumb and Dumber, How Cuomo and Blasio Ruined New York. Matt Palumbo. Welcome, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Brett.
Absolutely. So you've got this great new book. I love the cover. The biggest news out of New York recently was this revelation that the Cuomo administration had severely underreported the number of nursing home deaths due to Cuomo's nursing home policy. Can you walk us through what happened there?
Yeah, so the thing about this report is we actually kind of knew this back in August, not to a different extent than this report is saying, but basically what happened was, just to give an overview of the scandal, Cuomo was working under the assumption, he had all these predictions that hospitals were going to be overwhelmed. So as a way to deal with that, or try to free up capacity, he decided, well, let's take coronavirus patients and move them to nursing homes, which are filled with the people most vulnerable to coronavirus. So what could possibly go wrong? Not only that, he was the only state, and there were other states that did the same disastrous policy. He was the only state, though, where it was illegal. He banned testing of people going from hospitals to nursing homes. So it was, theoretically, you could get some coronavirus patients who are no longer infectious because they were, had it for a long enough time and were still recovering, but there was no way to know because of that. Mm-hmm. So 2 months after that, it was at March 25th was the order that required nursing homes to take these patients. There was one nursing home that refused. Surprise, surprise, they had no COVID deaths there, but there were 6,000 deaths within those the 2 months afterwards. Now, the Associated Press had an expose where they pointed out that the way they were counting deaths was if you got coronavirus in a nursing home and died in a nursing home, then it was a nursing home death. Well, if you got coronavirus in a nursing home and then went to a hospital and died, it was not a nursing home death. So at the time, there were 6,000 deaths recorded. The Associated Press estimated it was probably closer to 12,000. Now we have this AG report, and the day before the AG report, there's about 8,500 estimated coronavirus deaths in nursing homes. They're saying it's probably closer to 13,000. So the numbers are more or less in line with what the Associated Press said back in August. But now that it's the AG, it's actually getting a lot more attention, and there could theoretically be consequences, though I don't know if we should really get our hopes up.
Yeah. New York has had some of the most severe COVID restrictions in the country, yet they don't seem to be faring any better than other places. What would be the difference, in your opinion, between New York and, say, Florida?
Well, the justification for these lockdowns wasn't that it would eliminate the virus. It was that it would slow the spread so we have hospital capacity. And, all these concerns about capacity weren't really ever realized. New York, all these field hospitals, Trump literally sent a boat there, a boat hospital that could fit 2,000 people. That was never used. And I actually go through some of the regulatory reasons why in the book. And, it just seems that one explanation is we just don't know as much about this virus as we do, because there doesn't really seem to be as much of a correlation between lockdowns and the spread of the virus. And, this is obviously armchair epidemiology. I don't pretend to know one million what other people know, but from what I'm reading, it seems that, if you want a lockdown to work, you have to do it almost before there's any cases or there's only a few, or else it's just not going to be as effective. And the economic, you have to weigh it against the economic costs. I think South Dakota, Kristi Noem's South Dakota is actually a better example. Because they had almost no restrictions, no mask mandate, none of that. And admittedly, their deaths are way above the national average. They're about fifth in the nation. New York is second. But the main difference is South Dakota has a lower unemployment rate now than before the pandemic. They're at 3%. New York's at about 8.5%. New York City's at 12%. And those are understatements because a lot of people just gave up looking for work, so they're not counted as unemployed. So in that line, you go, okay, well, lockdowns don't really work in stopping the spread, but they do work in suppressing economic activity. So, what's the point at that point?
Pick your poison, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's tough. How bad has the damage been in terms of the human cost to New York? Besides the horrendous amount of deaths we're looking at in terms of businesses going bankrupt, people on unemployment, evictions, that sort of thing, just the economic impact. It looks like it's been just completely devastating, but talk about some of the specifics.
Yeah, so in the book, and I probably should do an updated version eventually. Most of it was written in the middle of the year.
Right.
at the time, I found a report on, I think it was specific to New York City, and they were pointing out most restaurants and bars only had about 2 to 3 months worth of cash to cover, to cover expenses in the event of a lockdown. This one report from, what the heck was the name of this place? Let me just get the exact name. It's a nonprofit, the Partnership for New York City. It's run by a number of CEOs from top firms. They were estimating up to 80,000 permanent small business closures. That was back in July, though. So obviously it's going to be much higher today. And, as we see, their unemployment rate in New York City is now 12%. And that's obviously not the true unemployment rate. It's obviously much higher.
You have any idea if that is that high, across the U.S.? I know, in Arizona here, we're like around 6, I think, right now.
The national average is around 6-ish right now.
Yeah. Okay. So New York is abnormally high. I
mean, it's double the national average there. And even, 8% versus 6% is 25% or so higher than the national average. So, yeah, it's significant. Yeah. And people are all fleeing, too, which obviously is not going to help in the long run over the short run.
Yeah, I mean, their tax base is just being absolutely just decimated, which is why Cuomo recently is like, hey, we got to open back up. We can't wait,
Yeah, and the thing about that is they had their last indoor dining ban in December. By every metric in New York, coronavirus is worse in New York, and they just announced they're going to reopen indoor dining. So it obviously has nothing to do with whether or not it actually does anything. It was just, okay, now Trump's out. Let's do whatever.
It certainly seems like that. I mean, on the surface, that's exactly what's going on. Your book is more than just the pandemic, though. In 2020, we also saw huge repercussions from Black Lives Matter riots. We saw massive police retirements. I mean, it was just kind of carnage in New York. What about the violence associated with the riots, the cost of businesses, the police injured and killed? What kind of cost does that have overall?
So, and this is nationally speaking. In the wave of riots following George Floyd's death, I think there was about 25 people killed in the violence. The majority of them black, actually. And in fact, there was black people killed during these riots from, presumably Black Lives Matter rioters or other people that just were exploiting it. More were killed by them than by police officers last year. I mean, killed while unarmed, I should clarify. So, yeah, I mean, they did way more damage than what they were supposedly fighting. Nationwide, there was estimated about $2 billion in damage in insurance payouts, which is more than any natural disaster. And while that is a lot in insurance payouts, most of that is not small businesses. It's the big businesses that can't afford it. We always hear this argument. Well, they have insurance, and
right.
A, what we know about insurance, A, we need it, and B, it always sucks. Like I have health insurance. For some reason, I need to fight to get for them to pay for what I'm paying them to cover. And I've never had business insurance, but I assume to some extent it's the same if you do have it. And the fact of the matter is most of these people actually don't. They can't afford it. And even if they did and everything worked out perfectly, everything gets replaced. It's going to take them months to rebuild it. They're going to still have to pay people to clean out the place. And then lastly, their insurance premiums are going to be permanently higher. So the cost is getting paid no matter what.
People never talk about that. They say, oh, they have insurance, but it's just going to drive up the rates of insurance and make it even less likely for businesses to have it.
Yeah, I had insurance. My car, had an accident that was not at my fault. The other person's insurance covered it, so I had to go through their insurance. But I had to pay everything out of pocket at first for the rental, the repairs, and everything. Then got reimbursed. It took 6 months. Now, and that's the thing. If I didn't have the money to spare, I would have been screwed, even though there was insurance involved. And the same exact thing could happen to these kind of businesses.
Right. I mean, having to basically they reimburse you. That's, not everybody's going to have that cash on hand, like you said, Gosh, it's just absolutely insane. This idea that businesses can just take a business that's been around for 30 or 40 years and just magically rebuild it within like 6 months. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that. It's just not quite that easy. Hey, let's just pick up and move somewhere else. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe out of state.
Yeah, it's just the ideal move. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot between de Blasio and Cuomo. There's been a lot of news about these two guys and just the basic carnage going on in New York. But some things that maybe people don't think about, on the surface.
So there's actually an interesting part of the book where I point out, I talk about why people are fleeing New York in the economic section.
Yeah.
And Florida is the number one destination, so I thought, well, why not compare them to Florida to see what's different? And New York's government, their state government, is about double the size of Florida's in terms of what it spends per capita, or per citizen, rather. I guess that's the same thing. Either way. So I go, okay, well, how does their educational systems compare? And Florida's is just a little bit better. But with the difference in spending, it's you realize, well, why spend double when you're getting the same thing? You look at their poverty rates. New York's is maybe a percentage point lower after you adjust for, if you count welfare payments as income. Mm-hmm. But when you're spending twice as much, it's really not that much. And I just go through all this whole list of factors and go, you're not getting anywhere near the bang for your buck when you live in a state like New York. The cost of everything is just inflated for whatever reason. And I imagine there's corruption could play a role. The cost of living is just naturally higher there. But the fact of the matter is Florida's able to get pretty much all the same things done and even have better infrastructure with half the cost. So, why wouldn't you go there and pay less taxes in the process?
Also, what was the difference in the nursing home deaths, Florida and New York? I want to go back to this really quick because one of the things I was thinking about when this all began almost a year ago was you've got a huge elderly population down in Florida, you've got the villages, and at the time I was sitting there thinking, oh man, it's gonna decimate all of those Trump voters. Frankly, we got to protect them. And
maybe that was almost logic. I actually had that more of a thought when it was happening.
Hey, it crossed my mind. I mean, just from the standpoint that seniors vote usually Republican, Florida's a very red state, and you've just got a plurality, a huge mass of elderly down there. And lots of places like the Villages. The Villages is just only one place.
And it was almost only exclusively Democrat governors that did that policy. I think there was one or two Republican governors that did it, but it was almost all Democrats. Amusingly, they later tried to blame Trump CDC's guidance for telling to do that, which I went, it's a little weird that only Democrats would follow the Trump CDC's guidance, but
What Cuomo can't make an executive decision? He can't say, we're not going to follow this. I mean, he does that quite a bit. He did that quite a bit under Trump.
And it was complete nonsense. I quote all these other regulatory agencies saying, no, that was never our guidance. What are you talking about? But so the 6,000 deaths was within 2 months of the nursing home policy. It was about 6%, or either 6 or 10% of New York's nursing home population. Mm-hmm. Florida's they lost about under 2% within that same time period. So obviously, listen, elderly are susceptible to this disproportionately. You are going to always have some base level nursing home deaths, but the difference was 3 to 5 times higher in New York.
Well, and didn't DeSantis bar COVID patients being put into nursing homes?
Correct. Yeah, he did the opposite of the dumbest possible thing he could do.
Yeah, I mean, DeSantis is just looking better and better every day, man. I mean, just how he handled this. And then something else that I was thinking about just now was, didn't they also have all of those cruise lines dock in Florida and kind of hang there for a while they quarantined and let people off? I remember hearing there was a bunch of cruise lines that were all diverted to Florida for some reason because they had a bunch of COVID cases. They had to go somewhere, and they were able to manage that.
Yeah, I actually don't know the story, but it wouldn't surprise me. Speaking of cruises, and I guess this is only somewhat relatable when I'm talking about boats, but Trump sent the USNS Comfort to New York to help, to help with excess capacity. I guess there were regulations on the books where you couldn't directly send a patient to the boat to be treated, and ambulances couldn't bring them there. They had to go to a hospital and then be referred. And it was just this regulatory disaster, and at no point did Cuomo decide, hey, maybe we shouldn't obey these rules.
Well, that's the same Navy ship there's two of them. One he sent to L.A. for Newsom, and Newsom didn't use them either. And then you've got the one that went to New York. They also converted the Javits Center, which I've been to many times for New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
And they I think they had something like 2,000 beds or near there, all set up, ready to go. They put it up within 72 hours or something. It was really kind of remarkable how quickly they got that whole thing up and running. I don't remember them really using that much either. It's
funny you mention that because Cuomo, there's been different stages of denial since the scandal. So he initially had his health department commission a study exonerating his own health department. And I go through why it's nonsense in the book. And then he kind of went to denial mode where he was like, no, we never needed space. What are you talking about? We had all these tent hospitals we never used. Why would we have needed space? And I'm going, well, you should have sent them there. And obviously, you must have. Why didn't you just send them there instead? And then, his latest offense was, who cares where they die if they died, which is very, very sensitive.
Yeah. It's been really heartbreaking. Just watching the elderly, largely the World War II generation, just get basically taken out by this thing. Even people like Janice Dean, she's one who has spoken out, and probably the most renounced person that's spoken out against Cuomo and de Blasio. And I mean, there's a lot of criticism, but I don't see these guys making any changes to policy or really doing anything differently or even admitting that they did anything wrong.
I mean, they did delete that nursing home advisory from their website in embarrassment. So that's the only change was them trying to cover it up, I guess, or pretend it never happened.
Or that lovely poster that de Blasio made, as I recall, with all the artwork and everything. That was just...
Was that the COVID Hill one? I think that was Cuomo. And obviously,
Cuomo? Okay.
And obviously it then did that not long afterwards.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. This whole thing's just been, it's been tragic, it's been sad, but it's also just been super cringe just watching these guys. Just, I mean, they have failed at every angle of this thing, and it's just kind of striking, frankly.
At the end of the pandemic chapter, I go like, it's the whole chapter is this whole train wreck, and then I go, and here's the media singing his praises, and it's just the media praising him through at every stage of, or even like they'll have him on a show, and the person will quote them saying like, you're doing so much better than in Florida, and then I compare the death toll to Florida at that date, and I go, how are you even like? Are you not looking up these numbers? Are you just hoping no one else does? How do you believe this?
It just seems like it's state-run media, basically. I mean, it's not just the governor's brother on CNN giving him favorable treatment. It's everywhere.
Yep,
literally everywhere, except basically with Janice Dean and certain people on Fox News and other networks who are actually calling it as it is.
To some extent, that was the genesis of this book. I mean, early on, I was very aware. I knew nothing of this virus or anything, and how to combat it. And all the media was in unison praising Cuomo. So I just decided, all right, let's see what he did right. And I'm going over thinking, well, I can't find it.
Yeah.
So
right. And where's the rest of the press doing the work that you did in this book, frankly, while live while it was happening? I mean, they're MIA basically.
Yep.
So it's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us, we're out of time, but tell me where we can find the book and where our viewers can find you on social media.
Right. I mean, I guess the most obvious place for the book is Amazon, but I understand a lot of people are boycotting it for what they did to Parler, which I support, obviously. But it's on Post Sale Press's website, Barnes & Noble, I think even like Walmart's website. I mean, if you Google the book, probably a dozen things will pop up. Mm-hmm. And then where to find me is Twitter's, am I forgetting my own handle? It's either mpalumbo12 or mattpalumbo12. I'm sure you'll have it in the description either way.
Yeah, I will. I'll put it in there.
So one of those two that will be clarified in due time.
Cool. All right. That sounds good. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it. And definitely come back and visit us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So everyone make sure to check out thepoliticalinsider.com and subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss any of our stories from our talented writers. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please like and share this video far and wide. Subscribe to the Political Insider channel on YouTube and Rumble and hit the bell for notifications so you never miss any of our new stories like this one. Until next time, keep the faith and stay frosty. Thanks, everybody.